Welcome to our second program segment for Seniorities, our program through the Senior Center and Council on Aging, addressing activities and services that we provide through the Senior Center here in Scituate. With me again, thankfully, is J.D. Miller, our present chair of our Scituate Council on Aging Board of Directors.
Thank you, Linda. Thanks for having us. So we want to use Seniorities as a platform to let people know, among other things, what's going on what's going on in town. But certainly initially, what's going on with the Council on Aging and what you've got under your umbrella in terms of tasks, programs, you name it. So today we wanted to touch on the umbrella of social services through the Council on Aging. I know we're going to try to get, you've got a manager who's, we're going to try and get on board
Next
here in the future, on a future program, Laura Manier. But we want to just get an overview, as we will next week, maybe on some other areas, but we want to get an overview on the number of things that go on in terms of social services at the Council on Aging and how people are being helped in a variety of different ways.
Okay. I think I can do the broad strokes for that. Social services and outreach through the Senior Center is critical, of course, to our mission and what we do. And I actually thought, I didn't do this in our last segment, but I thought it would be nice to start with our Council on Aging mission statement and then also segue over to the social services mission statement, just to give an idea of how we frame things here. But the mission of the Scituate Council on Aging is to identify the unique needs and interests of our senior citizens and implement programs that will enhance the quality of life, independence, and physical and emotional well-being of a growing aging community here in Scituate. And that is on our newsletter, and we do read and remind ourselves of that at our board meetings and have our staff do that periodically as well. On the subject of social services, which is broad in and of itself, their objective and the objective of Laura Manier, as J.D. mentioned, as manager of social services, as well as Jenny Gerbis, who is our coordinator of the outreach programs we provide, is to work collaboratively to provide information and referral, consultation, assessment, short-term case management, and access to resources to all the residents of the town of Scituate. So, as a reminder, in fact, that Laura's position is as social services manager for the entire town of Scituate. In fact, the Council on Aging utilizes her position a great deal, as do many of the other departments, and in particular, the Department of Public Health within Scituate. So we share her, as do many of the other departments that require her skill set.
So Linda, you touched on a lot of things there. So break it down.
Right. So really, I could almost stop there if that was enough explanation, but it's not.
Yeah.
So absolutely. And I did think I would also first go to the idea of caregiver support and services. But going back a couple of years, we did a needs assessment study, which much of the town should remember. And through that survey and resulting report, caregiving in general and information regarding caregiver resources was noted as a significant priority among the community that had been surveyed. And we took that to heart, not that we don't or didn't already provide that. We wanted to maybe start to provide more and maybe try to identify the segments of the population that needed that more. So we have been trying to add that into our programming. We have a monthly support group for caregivers, and that is a general caregiver support group, not specific to any one concern that they might be providing care for. It is monthly, as I mentioned. It's at St. Mary's on the third Wednesday at noontime, St. Mary's Parish Center, with our licensed social worker, Laura, as well as a case manager from South Shore Elder Services, which is absolutely one of our partners and the state-funded agency that administers certain services to Scituate. And
So let me hop in here for a second. The caregiving can be a full-time job.
certainly.
So
change.
we've got
Yeah.
families who are, and certainly it's the sandwich generation that's caught in taking
Sure.
care of younger
Sure.
children or younger adults, and then older mom and dad, and they're stretched like beyond belief both ways.
Sure.
So if someone were to attend the caregiver support group, that gives them a forum to be able to, if nothing else, just sort of decompress and talk to
Sometimes,
somebody else
sure.
who's also living the same world.
Sure. Absolutely. Just addressing their own, concerns and questions. Sometimes just a relief.
Just a relief sometimes.
Respite.
Yep.
In this case, certainly. And we would like it if we could provide more respite opportunities, which we don't necessarily have. We have a couple of things that we're trying to plan that would address both the caregiver and the client, and just
Right.
making more available to them during the day.
Right.
But it is just a opportunity to sit with others who are experiencing the same, problems or concerns or practices, and just get reinforcement from,
As well as be facilitated
from
and
professionals,
assisted
yeah.
with some professional
Yeah,
help.
exactly.
And guidance.
Exactly. Oftentimes, I'm sure it results in information that they maybe didn't have
Didn't know
another.
about, right?
So that is valuable, and there are other support groups that we actually list in our newsletter, some of them in the evening because some can't make it during the day.
Sure, absolutely.
Others that maybe are more specific to Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, for instance, and also just other general caregiver support groups that are meeting
Cancer
outside of
survivor,
town. Yep.
Parkinson's, Alzheimer's certainly
Yep,
is problematic,
Yep.
to say the least, for people.
Right.
So we kind of do, Laura and or her social elder services kind of does one per week?
One
or
per month.
And then there are others in the community.
Yes. A little bit outside the community.
Yeah.
Cohasset, Norwell, Duxbury,
Yep.
and we do list those in our newsletter, and try to keep on top of the status of those, making sure that they are still running. Other potential support groups that we have thought to provide and are working on seriously, one would be a bereavement and grief support group, which we've been trying to plan for a little while. So if anyone is interested in that, the more we hear, the more quickly we can put that together. But that's high up on our list. And
Again,
also,
suddenly someone's been widowed,
right,
doesn't have anybody to talk to or to
Yeah.
just confide in, and that bereavement support
Sure.
group might help open things up a little bit.
well, sometimes we
calm
hear
things
about
down,
it
whatever.
peripherally. We've met with the funeral home, the
Yep.
local funeral home, Richardson Gaffey,
Right.
and they've noted the need, and they feel like they could make referrals. Sometimes they might come directly to our outreach or social services, and just need to talk.
Yep.
So we
Yeah,
think we've
just
seen
need
the
to talk is
need
right.
and just want to organize or coordinate that well. Also, and we have tried this a little bit, but I think if we got the information out for just a general monthly coffee talk discussion group, which isn't any particular topic, but gives people an opportunity to meet with Laura, with her skill set, and/or come into the senior center and just know more about what we do and what we can provide in terms of information, but just
Almost an open forum.
vet
Right.
some of their
Right.
thoughts,
Frustrations,
concerns,
thoughts, yep.
frustrations, even if it's just with aging in general or the community, or just trying to find some forum for what they need to talk about. So that's been another idea, and again, give us...
Obviously, no cost on any of
No
this.
cost, no.
So people can
Yep.
feel free to attend.
Sometimes we just need a thumbs up.
Schedule permits.
that people want us to do it, and we'll do it.
Right.
So, in addition, certainly, Laura, and in general, our outreach program will meet with individuals and families. Oftentimes, they have questions as to what direction to go, especially on issues involving care for a senior, whether, again, it's a son or daughter with a parent or a spouse or a relative or a friend. Sometimes we get calls from friends and neighbors just as often as family members.
And that's okay, because sometimes those are the people that need to pick up the phone
Right.
and put in a referral, because the individual is not going to ask for help.
Often.
So it's okay to call if you see something,
Yeah.
someone's having a problem.
So that might involve a very subtle intervention, just
Yep.
a phone call, or maybe an in-home visit if the client or resident is agreeable to
Yep.
that, and that's a nice way to make the connection. Sometimes it is the first time we might make a
Right.
connection with this person. And sometimes Laura can get involved in short-term case management, helping them with certain steps toward services. Most of her meetings involve information and referral, as I mentioned in the mission statement for them in their objectives. Jenny as well with outreach, but Laura both deal with, needs for food assistance simply, housing information. We may help with application completion for certain housing options, counseling referrals, advocacy. I mean, sometimes it does get that serious if Laura has been made aware of placement concerns and someone needing a little extra
Right.
legal advocacy to
Right.
maybe get the
Get through some
attention
hurdles.
that
Yep.
they need.
Yep.
We do have a social services brochure that actually does go out to many newcomers in the community through
Hello, Scituate?
Hello,
Yep.
Scituate.
We work with Hello Scituate to get information out to newcomers. Absolutely.
And then
right.
anyone interested in more of this information that we're touching on could just call and have a brochure mailed or stop in for it. But it does list the kinds of areas that they would be able to help with, if anyone was wondering that. Certainly always directing to the proper resources, whether it's in-home care that they need help with, or starting that process of maybe needing to move a senior into assisted living or other residential communities. So we get a lot of information from outside agencies and private communities that want us to know about them so that
Right.
we can refer that information to our seniors. So we try as best we can to get to know these places and people that that run with them, just so that we can feel comfortable making those references and referrals and recommendations, though we try to stay away from specific recommendations.
Yeah, but there's a lot of resources out there, and no one knows it all. So the more you know about, the better.
We do try to provide that on, even through our cafe talks, which sometimes are just recreational and leisure and, nice to know local information, but sometimes it's important bringing caregiver resources. We just had the caregiver coordinator for social elder services do a cafe talk for us. And again, we should do it more often, because I think people might need to see and hear it more often in order to come in the door, because we didn't have a large audience. And again, because I think the community has said they need it, I think we'd like to find a way to get them in, whether
Yeah.
it's doing this at night sometimes might be the case.
Just got to remind people that there are services out there. Remind people to that it's okay to ask.
Housing is another area. I will just mention that sometimes people come to us because they don't know where else to go for information as to where they might be able to apply, how to apply, who to call. So we do provide that. And also hope we would know about resources that would be available to people. So again, sometimes that's part of the job. Certainly seniors with their own concerns who are seeking resources, counseling, any sort of short-term assistance through a difficult time also would want to contact Laura and or Jenny, or just the senior center in general. Laura herself, and she may talk about this, has been involved in some of our programs because her skill set is special and so useful to us. But we did a one-day Live Your Life Well program last spring, and it's a little bit of a speed dating format where there were 10 topics to be discussed, all centering around more or less mental wellness, but different physical activity, getting enough sleep, but also connecting with others, helping others, different areas that we know make us all feel better. And good. Healthier, and continue,
right.
Yep, and get up every day sometimes. So she, and nicely enough, another volunteer social worker, did participate with us. Some of the other community members that we tapped as professionals in some areas helped too. But they were really, really wonderful to have, and I think made the program successful. Just that we have those to. And also with our Aging Mastery program, she participated in that when the topic's relevant. You know, it's great to be able to call on her.
Right.
As does everyone else in the community, you know. So it's good. Laura does also, and actually one of the, probably the biggest reason she was brought in by the town administrator when the position didn't exist prior, was as a shelter resource. So Laura is always on deck, so to speak, for storm preparation, emergency management,
Okay.
and if it results in a shelter situation, she is there helping to care for seniors, especially those who might be a little more at risk, a little bit more frail, and needing that little extra care.
So the community
that she
shelter
gives.
is in the high school, right?
It has been in the high
So
school.
if we had an emergency and people were displaced,
yes,
Laura would be there.
she would.
Okay.
I might. I'm
Yeah,
less.
yeah, right.
I'm less useful than her, but no, it's great, and we are all involved. But Laura, Jenny, myself, in making sort of pre-storm phone calls, wellness checks, make sure they know what they would do, or we know what they
Right,
might need,
right.
and can communicate that if needed to our safety
Think
first
about it and be
responders, our
ready as
emergency
opposed
personnel.
to-
But she would be the on-site shelter support that really is you can depend on.
Wow, I
She
didn't know
also
that.
writes
That's
a little
great.
bit in our newsletter, you know, topics that she can address and that she has maybe seen in the population that she wants to bring out and help others, because naturally you see it once, you know, it probably exists elsewhere.
So can I
Yes.
bounce?
Yes.
Sort of a segue along that.
yeah.
So wasn't or isn't Laura involved in a hoarding task force?
Yes. In fact,
So for
she-
seniors who are
yes, it's
they
a
can't-
cluttering.
it's a cluttering
Cluttering
issue.
disorder.
And I've walked into apartments and houses that you couldn't move in. There was a pathway through a kitchen, through a hallway. There were stacks. There were wires and cords from electrical devices all over the place that you were either tripping
Sure.
over or had to step under.
Sure.
There was paper
Okay.
that could be catching on fire. I mean, so that's an issue for people.
Yes, it's certainly become one that's really come into more view in the public side too. But both Laura and Jen Keefe of the Health Department lead our task force. It is called the Scituate Hoarding Response Team. It involves the fire department, police, health department, building, council on aging, social elder services, and we meet generally monthly. And have addressed, you know, certainly a variety of concerns. It's nice that it's multidisciplinary because sometimes it comes to our attention through different
I was going to say,
agencies.
it's difficult for people to raise their hand and say, I'm a hoarder, I need help. So it's got to be a referral maybe from a next door neighbor who says,
Right.
I went over and saw
Often.
that living situation and it's not healthy.
Sure. That does happen, absolutely. Once it comes to our attention, certainly there are methods that we use to try and help. We, as a team, are also trying to educate the community so there is more awareness, not only that this situation and condition potentially exists, but that it is it's a disorder, it's a condition, and
right.
it's something that needs to be dealt with sensitively.
They're not going to necessarily get better. They're going to continue unless we get them some help.
Right. So the education is a big piece. Last April, we had a wonderful presentation by a couple who has dealt with the issue themselves successfully, and now tours and speaks, and they were phenomenal. And it was really not only well done, well received, probably about 40 participants. And in addition, through grant money that we've applied for every year and received for the last couple of years anyway, and that grant money could be used and has now been used to fund another support group. So we do participate in that. One of them meets at the senior center at night. There's another that meets during the day, and then a newer one. It's a peer-led group. But I think I would let Laura talk a little bit more about that next time.
Yep.
But we are at least supporting the effort, and you know, those that came to that first presentation liked it so much, liked what they heard, felt good about it, that most of them ended up connecting and joining the support group with an additional social worker that we've been using for that. So that is a nice segue as well, because we have another one coming up on Tuesday night, April 11th. So that is going to be held at the Senior Center. In fact, it's an evening one at 6:30 on April 11th. And it's going to involve viewing a short film, one that I've seen before and is very relevant and helpful, followed by an overview of the disorder and how it affects people, related research, and just the fundamentals of how to help anyone who might be challenged by this particular condition and problem. So that will start to be publicized actually next week, I believe. So that is something I'm happy to announce, April 11th at the Senior Center at 6:30 at night. But if you have any questions, please call. But that's been very gratifying and I think very helpful, and Scituate, not for the first time, has sort of become a leader in the local area for trying to address this. Certainly there's been help and resources from outside the community that had been doing it, but both Laura and Jen have been very proactive and helpful in organizing this. So that's been a great thing.
And again, I can't emphasize enough, the individual in question is not going to raise their hand generally and ask for help. So family, friends, neighbors have kind of got to take it upon themselves to take care of others.
Yes, I think that does happen often. But if the information is out there, that is just another little lifeline sometimes for someone to identify themselves also, which has been good.
Yeah.
That's nice. We do have other partnerships in the community that, as social services manager, Laura does get involved with, because it's a good connection and one that she needs and relies on. But the Clergy Association that meets periodically, or sometimes just contacts her with some needs, and vice versa.
Specific or
Scituate
South
specific.
Shore? Okay.
Yep, Clergy. Community Christmas, which somewhat changed their mission this year, but has always been very generous and attentive to senior needs in the community, so that continues.
I want to just jump in there.
Okay.
Even though the name of the organization is Community Christmas, or Scituate Community Christmas, it's year-round.
I guess it is now, yeah.
It is not specific to, I mean, they had previously, I believe, had a focus on
it was a
end-of-year holiday time frame. They are open and available to help year-round.
I guess that's their new, sort of their new mission.
That's terrific.
Yep, it is terrific. SANS is another one in terms of disaster assistance, following their original mission had been following, I think, fires in the community, but now they're broader, and we go to their meetings and give input where we can, help when it's needed, and certainly 2 winters ago, worked closely together to get us out of that 6-week mess or so that we had. But for 2 weeks, of course, digging out seniors was a big priority, which SANS helped with. But that had a lot to do with our partnership and Laura's connection with them, as well as the COA.
Well, people were displaced. People were flooded.
Well, they were calling,
right?
They were calling. We were in the snow shoveling business.
They needed a place to live for a month.
Oh, true, sometime.
So, needed help.
Social Peer Recovery is another organization in town that she does help with. FACS is more youth-based, and Social Peer Recovery is more broad-based.
Social Peer Recovery, who's that? And FACS, who's that?
Well, Anne-Marie Galvin is FACS.
Yes.
And again...
and that's for addiction, generally, correct?
Well, that's for prevention, I think.
Addiction awareness, prevention.
Right, awareness, education,
health.
Prevention, assistance, with just educating youth and giving them alternatives, I think.
Yep.
And probably helping as well with recovery and helping families understand what they're dealing with. That did result in a support group that does, again, also, it's nice to be able to say, does meet at our senior center on the weekends, every week, Sundays at 11. Which was organized by FACS, by Anne-Marie, but we simply host it, or provide the space, I should say, for it. But that's been a nice, and Social Peer Recovery is a lot more for recovery, for actual addiction. And Laura does assist with, certainly there are families, again, whether it's senior related or not, who are dealing with that, and she has helped either get connected with peer recovery, or at least given them the information they need in order to get there.
Right.
So some organizations aren't always associated traditionally with seniors, but, there's always an element of relevance, and it's nice to just be part of the community. Yep. So she does her best to really have connections with all of them, which is great. We have another program on deck, the Friendly Visitor Program.
I was going to ask you about that.
She's back. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, tell us about this new program, the Friendly Visitor Program.
Okay. Well, like I said, we are poised, it is on deck. But, of course, insofar as Laura
But what's the concept?
The concept is to match maybe more isolated, remote seniors with some caring, interested volunteers just for a social visit. She is able to identify and or at least is in contact with some of these seniors that might have this need, so that's been nice. Some have identified themselves once they've known about it, but I think
there's an isolation factor for people that socialization is huge, a huge need.
Yeah. And it's sometimes is too much for them to consider the means that they could use to get out of the house, and especially in the winter, of course. So
sure.
We have volunteers who are interested in doing it. Of course, there's training involved in coordinating and scheduling and things. So that's been taking a little while, and having everything documented in waivers and releases and that sort of thing. But we are ready to go.
I happen to, because I've been privy to some of these conversations, it's making sure the people that are involved are appropriate to bring
in a good match
their time to visit someone else. So they need to be...
they need to hear what they might encounter and the kinds of things they shouldn't do. Certainly they could be asked to do things that aren't really part of the initiative or the mission. So it is really just a visit, just a social visit. I got an occasion last week to go with one of our fire lieutenants who was on that day doing the safety checks, which have been provided through a grant through the fire department.
Right. Yep.
And ordinarily Laura or Jenny might go as outreach to make that connection, but they were unavailable, so it was nice that I got to do it. But 2 homes in 2 hours, so I basically spent an hour with each household. And it was a nice chance to talk and find out a little bit more about them and to make a connection like that. And in one case in particular, they aren't really able to take advantage of programs outside the home or to come to the senior center. So, and she noted that, and it's disappointing for her, but anything we can provide
to reach those people
she's not alone,
can't,
and she's not the only one, meaning. But so that was a nice opportunity. So really we can thank the fire department for that initiative and getting us connected, which oftentimes does happen. So all those partnerships are important. We can't do it alone. It takes a village, not to overuse the term, but we say that a lot.
So Friendly Visitor Program is being rolled out. That's terrific.
We had one training for 3, so really that should be able to happen, and then we can go on to a few more after we're able to train those other volunteers, which I think is scheduled. I just don't know the dates right now. So that's awesome.
That's great. The isolation, as I said, the isolation factor for people is a tremendous handicap.
It is. We hope certainly the provision of transportation through us maybe eliminates that challenge or that hurdle for some. Still, it's a transition, getting them comfortable or using it as routine.
Right.
But that does help. The sloop maybe does help, the public transportation. But we have to get to them first and let them know how easy it is. So we try to do that.
Right.
In addition,
that's why we're here.
That's
to get this information out to people.
Yes, I hope it's working. Outreach in general. Certainly, we have them scheduled, so our next couple of segments will be with Jenny, who is our outreach coordinator, and Laura, who is our social services manager. So they're cued, so to speak, for our next programs to give more detail and to drill down into some of the things I'm mentioning here. but we do have kind of a celebrity volunteer that I thought was worth mentioning, just because a lot of times it is people's first impression of us when they come in, because they're turning 65 and they need to know more about Medicare or what to do about acquiring or the transition out of their private insurance into
Right.
what else is available. And Norman Tetro is our Shine volunteer counselor.
Right.
It is a little bit of counseling, because people,
absolutely.
they're overwhelmed or just boggled by the whole business.
And Norm is able
Yeah,
to
yeah.
simplify it.
So I've had more people say, well, this is my first time here, but I'm here to see Norm.
Yeah.
And, they're usually, they're always impressed and thankful that they have been able to meet with Norm and that we have a Norm. Shine is a state-funded, facility for this. So the funding comes, through our legislators. It was almost canceled this year, which is hard to believe. But anyway, they fund the training. Information is constantly updated and changes. So that is a necessary facet to what we do in outreach. And again, Jenny would talk more about that, and we would get Norm here too if we could. And sometimes
we plan to go into
Right.
greater detail on
Right.
some of these subjects as
Right.
we move forward.
Right. So, the health information needs is one thing. Always, and Jenny is wonderful at this, but finding the right plan for people where their prescription medications are concerned, sometimes that just involves, knowing what data to input into the computer and doing a search and finding the match between what they carry for insurance and what is provided through the pharmacies, and they all seem to be different. So, that's something that takes a special expertise.
It's very difficult to navigate, and any
Right.
help is
Right.
hugely important.
So we do that for people, or they do that for people. Fuel assistance applications, we are the point guard, and it goes through South Shore, or goes to, I should say, South Shore Community Action Council, which is in Plymouth, but it somewhat comes through us. So we can help people know what they need for documentation, which is considerable. And then once they have everything together, just filling out the application appropriately and getting that in the mail. Anyone over 60 would come or call the senior center and work with Jenny. But under 60 are still eligible, depending on income guidelines, and they would see Laura directly, because again, as a town resource, that's Laura's bailiwick.
Okay.
So that is a big area, and in fact, we just learned that it was extended to May by the government.
The
Fuel
deadline.
assistance period.
Okay.
That you can still receive benefits for fuel assistance.
Okay.
So that's pretty big. Governor Baker, I think,
Yeah.
just announced that this week.
I'll say.
So, yep, that's wonderful.
So I want to keep you on track,
Okay,
and I know we're closing in on the
Okay.
end of our program.
okay. Perfect.
Current events.
Current events.
Do we have any current events we want to let
Well,
people
a
know
couple of
about?
updates I think I could mention. I think something on everyone's mind, and I'm asked frequently, is what's the story on a new senior center? So I can at least
What
mention.
is the story on this new senior center?
Well, what I can mention is, currently we, of course, are staying put. We will have supplemental space still being discussed, upcoming. But in terms of a potential new senior center, the concrete step that's been taken is the feasibility study, which was awarded to an architectural firm in Boston called Bargman, Hendry and Archetype.
And you just met with them recently.
So they called nicely, and I met with one of the architects or owners just to get my feelings on programming needs, priorities of the seniors and the staff, and just an idea, just to get an idea from me on what I think as they look at the 4 sites that currently are being proposed or vetted for appropriateness.
Right.
So, and much of the public might know this, but not everybody, so I will name them briefly.
Please.
But behind Gate School, where the field is, behind Central Park Housing and the actual library on Branch Street, which had been under consideration at another time. There is a new parcel of land being looked at off of the Driftway. I can't exactly identify where that is located. And then the property where the Purple Dinosaur Park is located.
On Country Way.
On Country Way.
Right.
So those are the 4 areas being looked at and assessed by this architectural firm
So in
for
terms of
feasibility.
land and
literally.
space, those are the 4 options. And then the architects talked to you a little bit about not necessarily physical needs, but just an overview of all the things that are under your direction,
Well, when they
right?
consider the appropriateness of the property or the parcel, then they need to sort of consider what kind of a building would go there
Right.
and how they might design that building. So it's, part of
Space,
their process.
parking.
So I think that was a very positive step. The report is due to the selectmen in June.
Okay.
So, that's good timing potentially for whatever they might find, and we'll learn that. But hopefully there's more involvement along the way, even for the next 2 months, while they do that with us. And the public, hopefully. I'd also like to take this opportunity to publicize, a nice activity that we look forward to. We've been doing it for the last few years with the Interact Club at the high school. So an intergenerational dinner and game night, which happens to be a week from Monday, March 27th. But the students come in, at least a dozen of them strong, armed with games and dinner, I might add. And then there's a lot of, wonderful
And it's
interaction.
edible food that the students cook?
Absolutely Italian.
Great. Great.
Who doesn't eat Italian? I say that on St. Patrick's Day, but they bring games, we provide games. So there's a lot of learning between the two, sets of
And it's for the students
People.
to socialize with
it is.
with the
So,
senior community.
I
right?
think everybody gets something out of that,
Yeah.
really, both them and us.
I think
So
they
call
love
us, Scrabble, Bananagrams, Left, Right, Center. We'll come up with some good games, and maybe you want to learn something new. So we'd love to hear from you.
And when's that?
That is Monday night, March 27th at 4, I think it's 4 or 4:30.
At the
actually.
council.
At the Council on Aging, Senior Center. And then lastly, I just want to thank actually attendees. We had a tremendous event last Friday night at the River Club, my evening of Irish music that was funded partially for the entertainment by the Scituate Cultural Council, so we were very grateful for that, and also then the River Club and their generosity providing dinner and the venue. It was beautiful, and we had
Sold out.
190 to 200, I lost track, that last 10, but it was packed, and it was wonderful. It was a great evening. People really enjoyed themselves. It was a very happy thing. So I really...
Did you ever end up leading the Congo line there?
I did not. We decided against. There was not
Okay.
enough room between the tables to do a Congo line. So
Too many people.
grateful for that too.
Awesome music. I was there. Terrific,
Yeah.
terrific
Yeah.
music. The River
Terrific
Club
music. Yes.
put out a great set of some
Yeah.
food for everyone.
I
It
just
was great.
posted some photos on Facebook. So friend us, Scituate Council on Aging, and check out the pictures. And come next time if you didn't come this time. And anyway, just wanted to say thanks.
And tune in
That's
to
it for me.
Seniorities next time when we'll be back.
We will do outreach.
I'm J.D. Miller. I'm from the Council on Aging.
And Linda Hayes, Director of the Council on Aging. Thanks so much.